Admiral Zixtar stood on the bridge of his massive command ship, watching the stars through the wide viewing window. His four eyes moved slowly as he checked each display screen around him. The third fleet of the Galactic Coalition spread out in perfect formation behind his vessel. 300 ships moved through space like a school of metal fish, each one following his orders without question. The Velkhari Admiral had spent most of his long life in space. His people had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and their ships were the finest ever built. The Coalition fleet included vessels from 12 different alien races, but the Velkhari ships remained the strongest. Their energy shields could stop any weapon, and their plasma cannons could destroy entire planets. Today felt like any other patrol day near the edge of known space. They were checking the outer territories, making sure no pirates or rebels were causing trouble. The empty space ahead looked peaceful and quiet, just the way Zixtar liked it. Lieutenant Commander Krell sat at the sensor station, his 6 arms moving quickly over the controls. He was a hexapod, one of the best sensor operators in the fleet. His people had natural abilities that made them perfect for detecting distant objects in space. "Admiral," Krell called out, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "I am picking up something strange. There is an energy signature approaching from the void." Zixtar turned his attention to the main tactical display. A small dot appeared at the edge of their sensor range, moving steadily toward the fleet. The readings showed primitive fusion engines, the kind that most civilized races had stopped using long ago. "What kind of ship uses such old technology?" Zixtar asked, walking closer to the sensor station. "Unknown, sir," Krell replied, his arm still dancing over the controls. "The vessel is small, maybe 1/10 the size of our smallest escort ship. But there is something else. My sensors keep losing the lock on the target." This caught Zixtar's attention. Coalition sensors were the best in the galaxy. Nothing should be able to hide from them, especially not a ship using old fusion drives. Communications Officer Hext, a tall crystalline being with a body that sparkled like living diamond, looked up from his station. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the approaching vessel." "They are using radio waves." "Radio waves?" Zixtar repeated, surprised. Most species had given up radio communication thousands of years ago. It was too slow and primitive for serious use. "What are they saying?" "They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies," Hext reported, his crystal body flickering as he processed the signals. "The language is unknown, but our translation computers are working on it. They seem to be trying to make contact." Zixtar studied the tactical display again. The unknown ship continued its approach, moving at a steady pace that suggested confidence rather than fear. This puzzled him. Any primitive species should be terrified when they saw a coalition fleet. 300 warships were enough to conquer most star systems. "Sir," Krell spoke up again, "the ship's design is very strange. It appears to be built for war, but the construction methods are unlike anything in our databases. The hull is thick and heavily armored, but they are using materials that seem almost crude compared to our technology." "A warship?" Zixtar asked, moving to get a better look at the display. "Show me the details." The main screen changed to show a close-up view of the approaching vessel. Zixtar studied its design with growing interest. The ship was long and angular, with a hull that looked like it had been built to take heavy damage. Strange projections stuck out from various points along its surface, and the entire vessel had a functional, no-nonsense appearance. "It looks like something built by a species that expects to fight," observed Commander Veltan, Zixtar's second-in-command. The female Velkhari officer had served under Zixtar for decades and knew military designs when she saw them. But who would build such a primitive warship? Zixtar wondered aloud. And why would they approach our fleet alone? The answer to his questions came a few minutes later when Hext successfully decoded the radio transmission. "Admiral, I have a translation," the communications officer announced. "The message is simple. They are saying, 'Greetings from the people of Earth. We come in peace and wish to make contact with galactic civilization.'" Earth? Zixtar had never heard of such a world. "Check our databases. Do we have any record of this planet?" Several officers worked quickly at their stations, searching through the Coalition's vast collection of star charts and planetary surveys. After several minutes, they all reported the same result. "No records found, sir," Krell confirmed. "There is no planet called Earth in any of our files." This made the situation even more interesting. The Coalition had mapped most of the galaxy over the centuries. Finding a new inhabited world was rare, especially one that had developed space travel on its own. They claim to come in peace, Zixtar mused, but they approach us in a warship. This suggests they understand the dangers of first contact. What are your orders, Admiral? Commander Velton asked. Zixtar thought for a moment. Standard procedure was clear. When encountering a new species, the Coalition would evaluate their technology and culture. If they seemed peaceful and useful, they would be invited to join the galactic community. If they appeared dangerous or refused to cooperate, they would be conquered, and their world added to Coalition territory. Signal the fleet to assume defensive positions around the unknown vessel, Zixtar ordered. Not threatening, but ready. We will follow first contact protocols. The 300 ships of the Third Fleet began to move, forming a large sphere around the approaching Earth vessel. It was an impressive display of military coordination, designed to show any new species exactly how powerful the Coalition could be. Hail the Earthship, Zixtar commanded. Let us see what these humans have to say for themselves. As Hext opened the communication channel, Zixtar felt a familiar excitement. He had been present for several first contact situations during his career, and they were always interesting. Some species begged for mercy when they saw the Coalition fleet. Others tried to run. A few even attempted to fight, though that never ended well for them. He wondered which category these humans would fall into. Their approach in a single warship suggested either great courage or great foolishness. Soon he would find out which. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, looking out at the alien fleet that surrounded his ship. 300 vessels hung in space around them like deadly flowers, each one larger and more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. His crew of 47 humans worked quietly at their stations, maintaining the calm professionalism that had gotten them this far from home. Morrison was a tall man with graying hair and steady blue eyes. He had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years before volunteering for this mission. When the scientists at Earth Command detected signals from deep space suggesting intelligent life, someone had to make first contact. Morrison had volunteered because he understood the risks better than most. Captain, they're moving into position around us, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the communications station. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and quick fingers that never stopped moving over her controls. 300 ships in a perfect sphere formation. They're good at this. Morrison nodded, watching the alien ships through the main viewing window. Their formation was flawless, clearly the result of years of practice. These beings knew how to work together, which meant they had either conquered or united a large part of the galaxy. Any word from home? Morrison asked. Last signal from Earth Command was 6 months ago, Rodriguez replied. They wished us luck and reminded us to follow diplomatic protocols. Morrison almost smiled at that. Earth's diplomatic protocols were simple when dealing with potentially hostile aliens. Be polite, be honest, and be ready to fight if necessary. The Vengeance had been built with all three principles in mind. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh looked up from his station near the back of the bridge. He was a big man with rough hands and a mind that understood machines better than people. Captain, the warp drive is stable, but I don't like being surrounded like this. If we need to run, it'll take 30 seconds to charge the jump engines. Noted, Morrison replied. But we're not running unless we have to. Lisa, what's our tactical situation? Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park sat at the weapons control station, her hands resting lightly on the firing controls. She was small and quiet, but Morrison had never met anyone better at understanding the mathematics of space combat. Sir, each of their ships outguns us individually. Together, they could probably vaporize us before we could return fire. Probably? Morrison asked. Park's expression didn't change. I said probably, sir. Their weapons appear to be energy-based, likely plasma or particle beams. Our armor is designed to handle kinetic impacts, not energy weapons. But we have some advantages they don't know about yet. Before Morrison could ask what she meant, Rodriguez spoke up again. Captain, incoming transmission. Audio only, but their translation system seems to be working. Put it through, Morrison ordered, straightening his uniform jacket. The voice that came through the speakers was strange, with an odd rhythm that suggested it came from a throat very different from a human one. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Zixtar of the Galactic Coalition Third Fleet. You have entered Coalition space. State your intentions and prepare for inspection. Morrison activated his own communication system. Admiral Zixtar, this is Captain Jake Morrison representing the United Earth Systems. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with galactic civilizations. There was a long pause before the alien admiral responded. Morrison could imagine the discussion happening on the alien command ship. 300 ships against one usually meant the conversation would be short and one-sided. Earth, came the translated voice, sounding puzzled. We have no record of this world. Your vessel appears to be designed for warfare, yet you claim peaceful intentions. Explain this contradiction. Morrison looked around at his crew. They were all listening, waiting to see how their captain would handle humanity's first conversation with aliens. He had thought about this moment for months during the long journey from Earth. Admiral, my ship is indeed a warship, Morrison said calmly. We built her this way because we didn't know what we might find out here. We hoped for friends, but we prepared for the possibility of enemies. Another pause, shorter this time. Prepare to be boarded for evaluation. Do not resist and no harm will come to your crew. Morrison felt his jaw tighten. Being boarded was not part of the plan, but refusing might start a fight they couldn't win. He looked at his officers, seeing the same concern in their eyes. Chief Walsh, secure all sensitive systems, Morrison ordered quietly. Lisa, keep our weapons online but don't make any threatening moves. Amy, keep the channel open so they can hear everything we say. Aye, sir, all three replied. Morrison activated the communication system again. Admiral Zixtar, we will allow your boarding party aboard the Vengeance. However, I must inform you that this ship contains some systems that might be dangerous to your people. If handled incorrectly, I request that my chief engineer accompany your team to ensure everyone's safety. Your concern is noted, came the reply. Prepare to receive our transport. Morrison turned to his crew. Remember, we represent all of humanity today. Be polite, be honest, and follow my lead. If something goes wrong, trust your training and trust each other. A few minutes later, a bright light filled the bridge. When it faded, 5 alien beings stood near the center of the room. Morrison got his first close look at members of the Galactic Coalition. The leader was clearly Admiral Zixtar. He was tall and thin, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. His skin looked like polished metal, and he moved with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. The other 4 aliens were different species, but all carried themselves like professional soldiers. Captain Morrison, Admiral Zixtar said, his voice coming through a small device attached to his uniform. I am Admiral Zixtar. These are my senior officers. We are here to evaluate your species and determine your intentions. Morrison stepped forward, keeping his hands visible and relaxed. Welcome aboard the Vengeance, Admiral. I hope we can work together to establish peaceful relations between our peoples. One of the alien officers, a being with 6 arms and crystal-like skin, was looking around the bridge with obvious interest. Another, female and similar to the Admiral, was studying the human crew with calculating eyes. Admiral Zixtar approached Morrison until they stood face to face. The alien was taller, but Morrison didn't back down or look away. Your ship is primitive by our standards, the Admiral said, yet you approached our fleet without fear. Why? Morrison met the alien's 4-eyed gaze steadily. Because someone had to, Admiral. And because running away is not who we are. Admiral Zixtar studied Captain Morrison carefully as they walked through the corridors of the human ship. The vessel's interior was different from any warship he had seen before. Where coalition ships were built for comfort and efficiency, this human vessel felt like it had been designed by people who expected to fight for their lives. The corridors were wider than necessary, with thick bulkheads that could probably survive direct weapon hits. Emergency equipment was mounted every few meters, and the humans they passed moved with the alertness that reminded Zixtar of veteran soldiers. These people were ready for trouble. Your crew seems very disciplined, observed Commander Veltan as they followed Morrison toward the engineering section. How long have they been in military service? Most of them have served for at least 5 years. Morrison replied, stopping to let a human technician pass by carrying some kind of repair equipment. But everyone on this ship volunteered for this mission. They knew they might never see Earth again. This surprised Zixtar. In most civilized species, military service was either a career choice or a duty rotation. The idea that an entire crew would volunteer for a mission they might not survive seemed almost primitive. Why would they make such a choice? Asked Science Officer Vel, the 6-armed hexapod who had been scanning everything with his portable devices. Morrison smiled, an expression that the aliens found difficult to read. Because exploring the unknown is what humans do, sir. We've always been curious about what lies beyond the next horizon. They reached the engineering section where Chief Walsh was waiting for them. The big human engineer had prepared a demonstration of their propulsion system, with several display screens showing technical readouts. "Gentlemen," Walsh began, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone who loved his job. "Welcome to the heart of the Vengeance. This is our Mark 7 fusion drive system." The alien engineers in the boarding party moved closer to examine the displays. What they saw made them exchange worried glances. The human propulsion system was indeed primitive compared to Coalition technology, but it was also incredibly powerful. "Your fusion reaction is running much hotter than our safety protocols would allow," noted Engineer Thex, a Velkari technical specialist. "How do you prevent containment failure?" Walsh grinned, showing his teeth in another expression that made the aliens uncomfortable. "Well, sir, the truth is we don't prevent it. We control it. Every time we jump to faster than light speed, we're basically setting off a controlled explosion that could vaporize this entire ship if we get the calculations wrong." "That seems extremely dangerous," Thex said, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Sure is," Walsh agreed cheerfully. "But it's also what lets us cross interstellar distances in weeks instead of years. We figured the risk was worth it." Zixtar was beginning to understand something disturbing about these humans. They seemed to accept levels of risk that other species would consider insane. Their entire approach to space travel was based on barely controlled violence. The tour continued to the weapons bay, where Lieutenant Commander Park was waiting with another demonstration. The human weapons officer was small compared to the aliens, but there was something about her calm expression that made Zixtar nervous. "Our primary armament consists of what we call relativistic kinetic impactors," Park explained, activating a display that showed the ship's main guns. "Essentially, we accelerate dense metal projectiles to approximately 90% of light speed." The alien officers stared at the technical specifications in growing alarm. Engineer Thex was the first to speak. "These projectiles would carry the kinetic energy of small nuclear weapons." "What do you use them against?" "Anything that needs to stop existing," Park replied matter-of-factly. "Asteroid, space station, planet surface. At that velocity, it doesn't much matter what the target is made of." Science Officer Vel checked his readings again, as if hoping he had made a mistake. "According to my calculations, each projectile carries enough energy to crack the crust of a small planet." "Why would you build such destructive weapons?" Morrison stepped forward to answer. "Because sometimes, Officer Vel, you need to make sure your enemy understands that continuing to fight will cost them everything they care about." The casual way Morrison spoke about planetary destruction sent chills through the alien boarding party. In Coalition space, weapons capable of destroying worlds existed, but they were heavily regulated and used only in the most extreme circumstances. These humans talked about planet-killing weapons like other species discussed weather. "Captain," Zixtar said carefully, "your people seem to have a very direct approach to warfare." "We do," Morrison agreed. "We learned long ago that sometimes the best way to avoid a big fight is to make sure everyone understands how badly it would end for them." Commander Veltan, who had been quiet during most of the tour, finally spoke up. "How many ships like this does Earth possess?" Morrison looked at her for a long moment before answering. "The Vengeance is the first of her class, but not the only one. Earth Command has been building similar vessels for the past 10 years, ever since we detected signs of galactic civilization." "How many?" Veltan pressed. "Enough," Morrison replied simply. The answer was deliberately vague, but it sent a clear message. Earth had not sent their only warship on this diplomatic mission. They had a fleet, and if something happened to the Vengeance, more ships would eventually follow. As they walked back toward the bridge, Zixtar found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about first contact situations. Usually, primitive species were either too weak to be a threat or too afraid to fight back. These humans were neither weak nor afraid. "Admiral," Morrison said as they reached the bridge, "I want to be completely honest with you about something. Before we left Earth, my government gave me clear instructions. We're here to make friends if possible, but we're prepared to make enemies if necessary." "What does that mean?" Zixtar asked. Morrison gestured toward the main viewing screen, which showed the Coalition fleet surrounding them. "It means that if your people decide to treat Earth as an enemy, you'll find out just how seriously we take our military preparations. The human captain's voice remained calm and professional, but there was something underneath it that made all the aliens on the bridge step back slightly. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had looked into the darkness and was not afraid of what looked back. However, Morrison continued, "We'd much rather have you as friends and allies. The galaxy is a big place and there's room for everyone to prosper together." Zixtar realized he was facing a choice that would affect the entire coalition. These humans were offering friendship or promising war, and they seemed equally prepared for either outcome. Back on his flagship, Admiral Zixtar stood in his private conference room with his senior officers. The humans had allowed them to return to their own ship to discuss what they had learned, but the memory of the Vengeance's capabilities hung over the meeting like a dark cloud. "Report," Zixtar ordered, settling into his command chair. Commander Veltan spoke first. "Admiral, I have never encountered a species quite like these humans. They are polite and seemingly reasonable, but there is something underneath their calm behavior that concerns me." "Explain," Zixtar said. "They spoke about planetary destruction the way most species discuss routine maintenance," Veltan replied. "Their captain mentioned making sure enemies understand the cost as if total annihilation was just another diplomatic tool." Science Officer Vel raised one of his 6 arms. "Sir, I completed detailed scans of their ship during the tour. The human vessel is indeed primitive in many ways, but their weapons technology is far more advanced than their other systems suggest." "How so?" asked Zixtar. "Their kinetic weapons are crude but devastatingly effective," Vel explained, his arms moving as he called up data on his portable display. "The projectiles they showed us would penetrate any known shielding system through pure kinetic force. Our energy shields are designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, not solid objects moving at 90% of light speed." Engineer Thex nodded agreement. "Their propulsion system is equally concerning, Admiral. They have achieved faster-than-light travel by essentially riding controlled explosions. The entire ship is built around systems that could destroy it at any moment." "And they seem comfortable with this?" Zixtar asked. "More than comfortable," Thex replied. "They appear to prefer it." Chief Walsh spoke about their dangerous systems with obvious pride. "These humans have deliberately chosen the most violent solutions to technical problems." Admiral Zixtar considered this information carefully. In his long career, he had encountered many species. Some were naturally peaceful, others were aggressive, but most fell somewhere in between. The humans seemed to be something entirely different, a species that had weaponized their entire technological development. "What about their numbers?" he asked. "How many ships do they have?" Commander Veltan consulted her notes. Captain Morrison was deliberately vague about fleet strength, but he did mention that similar ships have been under construction for 10 years. "If we assume they can build 1 ship per year, that suggests at least 10 vessels. 10 ships armed with planet-killing weapons," Zixtar mused. "That's a significant threat." "There's something else, Admiral," Science Officer Vel added. "I detected energy signatures suggesting that their ship's weapons were fully charged during our entire visit. They were ready to fight even while conducting peaceful negotiations." This surprised Zixtar. Most civilized species would power down their weapons during diplomatic meetings as a sign of good faith. The humans had kept their ship ready for battle while smiling and offering friendship. "They don't trust us," Zixtar realized. "Can you blame them?" asked Commander Veltan. "We surrounded them with 300 ships and demanded to board their vessel. From their perspective, we probably looked like conquerors rather than diplomats." The Admiral considered this point. Coalition first contact procedures had been developed over centuries of dealing with primitive species. Most newly discovered civilizations were grateful to join the galactic community and eager to accept coalition protection. The humans seemed neither grateful nor interested in protection. "What do we know about their home system?" Zixtar asked. "Very little," Vel replied. "They mentioned Earth Command and referred to their government as the United Earth Systems. This suggests they have achieved planetary unity, which is unusual for a species at their technological level. Most species don't unite their homeworld until after they've made contact with galactic civilization," noted Thex. "The humans appear to have done it on their own." This was another concerning sign. Species that achieved planetary unity without outside help were usually either very peaceful or very warlike. Given what they had seen of human technology, Zixtar suspected he knew which category applied. "Admiral," Commander Veltan said carefully, I believe we need to consider the possibility that these humans represent a new type of threat, not just another primitive species with crude weapons, but a genuinely dangerous military force. How dangerous? Zixtar asked. Veltan was quiet for a moment before answering. Sir, their single ship carries enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet, if they were willing to sacrifice themselves to do it. Those kinetic weapons would tear through our formations before we could respond effectively. But they would die in the process, Thex pointed out. Would they care? Veltan replied. Captain Morrison told us his entire crew volunteered for a mission they knew they might not survive. These people seem prepared to die for their beliefs. The room fell silent as the officers considered the implications. A species willing to sacrifice their lives for their principles was unpredictable and dangerous. The Coalition preferred to deal with races that could be reasoned with, bribed or intimidated. What are our options? Zixtar asked finally. We could destroy their ship now, suggested Thex. It would take our combined firepower less than a minute to overwhelm their defenses. And then what? Commander Veltan asked. They said they've been broadcasting their location to Earth. If we attack them, we make enemies of their entire species. And according to Captain Morrison, they have more ships. We could try to intimidate them into submission, offered Science Officer Vel. Demand they surrender their homeworld coordinates and submit to Coalition authority. Zixtar shook his head. Did Captain Morrison seem like someone who would be intimidated? These humans approached our fleet in a single ship and never showed any sign of fear. The Admiral walked to the viewing port and looked out at the human vessel hanging in space nearby. It was small compared to his flagship, but somehow it seemed more threatening than ships 10 times its size. There's a third option, Zixtar said slowly. We could accept their offer of friendship and treat them as equals rather than subjects. His officers exchanged glances. This was not standard Coalition procedure. New species were expected to accept junior membership in the galactic community, with full rights and privileges earned over time through demonstrated loyalty. Admiral, Commander Veltan said carefully, the Coalition Council might not approve of treating primitives as equals. Are they primitives? Zixtar asked. They've achieved faster-than-light travel, unified their planet, and built weapons that could threaten our entire fleet. That doesn't sound primitive to me. The Admiral turned back to his officers. Gentlemen, I think we're looking at the emergence of a new major power in the galaxy. We can either be their friends or their enemies, but I don't think we can be their masters. What do you recommend, sir? Asked Veltan. Zixtar was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options carefully. The decision he made in the next few minutes might determine the future of Coalition relations with humanity for generations to come. Admiral Zixtar made his decision and activated the communication system to contact the human ship. Around him, his officers waited tensely to see how their first contact with humanity would end. Through the viewing port, the UES Vengeance hung in space like a dark promise, surrounded by 300 Coalition vessels that suddenly felt less powerful than they had an hour ago. Captain Morrison, Zixtar said into the communicator. This is Admiral Zixtar. I would like to continue our discussion. The reply came quickly. Of course, Admiral. What can I do for you? Captain, I want to be honest about our situation. The Galactic Coalition has specific procedures for integrating new species into our community. However, after observing your ship and crew, I believe those procedures may not be appropriate for humanity. There was a pause before Morrison responded. What kind of procedures are we talking about, Admiral? Zixtar chose his words carefully. Typically, new species are offered protection and guidance while they adapt to galactic civilization. They accept junior membership in the Coalition and gradually earn full rights over several generations. I see, Morrison said, his voice neutral. And you don't think that would work with us? Captain, your species appears to have developed advanced military technology and achieved planetary unity without any outside assistance. This suggests you are already a mature civilization, not primitives in need of guidance. Commander Veltan looked surprised at her Admiral's diplomatic approach, but she remained silent. Zixtar was rewriting first contact protocol in real time, and she trusted his judgment. We appreciate that assessment, Admiral, Morrison replied. What are you suggesting instead? A treaty between equals, Zixtar said, knowing that his words would shock Coalition leadership when they eventually heard them. Mutual recognition of sovereignty, establishment of trade relations, and coordination on matters of mutual interest. This time the pause was longer. Zixtar could imagine the discussion happening on the human bridge. Captain Morrison was probably consulting with his officers, trying to determine if this was a genuine offer or some kind of trap. "Admiral," Morrison finally said, "that sounds like exactly the kind of relationship we were hoping to establish. But I have to ask, don't you need to check with your superiors before making such an agreement?" Zixtar smiled, an expression that his officers found unsettling. "Captain, I am the commander of this fleet, and first contact situations require immediate decisions. I have the authority to negotiate preliminary agreements, subject to ratification by both our governments. In that case," Morrison said, "I believe we can work together." But before any formal agreements could be discussed, Morrison's voice came through the communicator again. "Admiral, there's something else I need to tell you. We've been broadcasting our location and status back to Earth throughout this encounter. Earth Command will receive our signal in approximately 6 months. The implications hit the Coalition officers immediately. If something happened to the human ship, Earth would know about it. More importantly, they would know where it happened and who was responsible." "I understand, Captain," Zixtar replied. "What exactly have you told them?" "Everything," Morrison said simply. "Our coordinates, the size of your fleet, the nature of our discussions." Earth Command wanted a complete record of first contact. Commander Veltan stepped closer to the Admiral and whispered, "Sir, if we had destroyed their ship, we would eventually face retaliation from their entire fleet." Zixtar nodded slightly. The humans had been thinking several moves ahead from the beginning. They had never been the helpless primitives his fleet had expected to encounter. "Captain Morrison," Zixtar said, "I believe it would be beneficial for our governments to exchange formal diplomatic communications. Would you be willing to carry a message from the Coalition Council to Earth Command?" "Absolutely, Admiral. And we'd be happy to carry your reply back to Coalition space." Over the next hour, the two commanders worked out the basic framework for human-coalition relations. The humans would be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights to their territory. Trade agreements would be negotiated between their respective governments. Most importantly, both sides agreed to resolve disputes through negotiation rather than warfare. As the negotiations concluded, Science Officer Vel approached Admiral Zixtar with a concerned expression. "Sir, I've been monitoring their ship systems during our talks. Their weapons have remained fully charged this entire time." "Expected," Zixtar replied quietly. "They were ready to fight if negotiations broke down. But sir, at full charge, those kinetic weapons could destroy half our fleet before we could respond effectively." Zixtar looked out at the human ship again. "I know, and that's exactly why we're making them friends instead of enemies." The formal conclusion of first contact came with a simple exchange of coordinates. The humans provided the location of Earth's outer sensor stations, while the Coalition shared the coordinates of several neutral meeting points near Coalition space. "Admiral Zixtar," Captain Morrison said as their discussion wound down, "it's been an honor meeting you. I hope this is the beginning of a long and peaceful relationship between our peoples." "As do I, Captain Morrison. Your people have made a strong first impression." "Just remember, Admiral," Morrison said with what sounded like amusement in his voice, "you haven't seen anything yet. The Vengeance is just one ship and she's not even our best one." The communication ended and both fleets began to separate. The Coalition ships reformed their patrol formation and prepared to continue their mission, while the human vessel turned toward home and engaged its dangerous but effective warp drive. As the Vengeance disappeared in a flash of controlled nuclear fire, Commander Veltan approached her Admiral. "Sir, do you think we made the right choice?" Zixtar watched the space where the human ship had been. "Commander, in my experience, there are two types of species in the galaxy. Those that can be conquered, and those that conquer others. I don't think the humans can be conquered. So we made them allies instead of enemies," Veltan observed. "We tried to," Zixtar corrected. "Whether we succeeded will depend on how both our governments handle the situation from here." In the months that followed, word of the human encounter spread throughout Coalition space. The story of a single primitive ship that had faced down the Third Fleet became legend among military circles. Some called it proof that the Coalition was growing soft. Others saw it as evidence of smart strategic thinking. But among the fleet commanders and tactical specialists who understood the true implications of the humans' technology, a new doctrine quietly emerged. Rule 1. Never give humanity a reason to demonstrate what they meant by total war. Rule 2. If Rule 1 was violated, evacuate all nearby systems and pray their planet-killing weapons were merciful. The humans had introduced themselves to galactic civilization not through conquest or submission, but through the quiet promise that some sleeping giants were better left undisturbed. Earth's expansion into the galaxy had begun, and the stars would never be the same.